You're very welcome.
Thank you. Hey, good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before you ask, I am doing a poor impersonation of Jerry Mallon. So, good evening, Lord Mayor, Minister Foster, ministers, distinguished guests, sponsors and colleagues. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome you all here to our President's Banquet this evening. It's particularly good to see such a packed house. Our spies tell us that there are at least 5 business dinners on in Belfast this evening, so congratulations to all of you for picking the best one. And please don't tell the women in business I said that. No, really, please don't tell the women in business I said that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to begin my speech with something of a confession. You see, when I accepted the honour of becoming Chamber President, I made a promise to our Chief Executive, Anne McGregor, that I would never start a speech with the terribly overused Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times." I really don't like it. I can hear you groan. The difficulty is that having told you in a speech that I promised not to use it in a speech, I reckon I've broken the promise. So now that I've done it anyway, forgive me for having a short rant, but the reason I don't like the quote is because it's actually about as Chinese as a Big Mac. Literally. It was actually just made up by a speechwriter for Senator Robert F. Kennedy in 1966. So it should be known as Kennedy's curse. And apparently the speechwriter just thought a 3,000-year-old Chinese proverb would probably play better in the media than any contemporary comment on the state of world affairs. I don't know if that tells us something about politicians and speechwriters, but I'll leave that for Arlene to comment. Now, Bobby Kennedy first used the quote in a speech he was giving at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, when he was talking about the need for individual integrity and respect for others when times are tough. And while I don't like the fictitious Chinese quote, his message was important. Today, almost half a century later, the challenges of global realignment, of lackluster economic recovery, and national crises make Kennedy's curse feel anything but contrived. Global growth has returned to its pre-recession trend, but the drivers of that growth continue to change. The UK, while still struggling under massive deficits and facing further years of recovery, is nonetheless among the best performing of the developed countries. Here in Northern Ireland, there are clear signs of recovery too, with growth of over 2% forecast this year and next. InvestNI has delivered a record year of job promotions, and congratulations, Alistair, on the announcement in City today. Expenditure on research and development is up. The improving in the economy in the Republic's having a positive impact on the North, and the number of people in employment is growing at close to the record levels that we saw in the decade through to 2008. And while that employment growth hasn't yet converted into the increases in productivity, wages, and living standards that we want to see, we do have recovery. And that's the first crucial step on a much, much more positive road. A road, ladies and gentlemen, where we must now nurture the other elements that will deliver economic regeneration. The higher value added sustainable employment, accompanied by community-wide social inclusion. The sort of economic regeneration that's going to make a real difference for all of our people. The business community, we have a key role to play in that process. And with 60% of Northern Ireland's exports coming from just a dozen world-class companies, we can and we must do better. And key to that process will be the Export Action Plan currently being developed by DETI. And if our hunger as a business community is to stimulate growth and sustainable jobs, we also have to say that our power to deliver the policies that can rebalance the economy is limited, because that power lies with our politicians. And with power comes hard choices. And working our way through those hard choices requires a vision that things can get better and a determination to make that vision a reality. As many of us know, in business, vision often involves a bold leap, not a cautious step. Radical change, not tinkering at the margins. As Henry Ford said, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. The Secretary of State, and indeed the Prime Minister as recently as today, have indicated that we might expect a decision on the devolution of corporation tax imminently. And while there's an acknowledgement that the power to set and vary the rate of corporation tax is not a silver bullet in itself that will regenerate the Northern Ireland economy overnight, there is an acceptance that it could be transformational over time. And ladies and gentlemen, time is moving on. Yet again, we find ourselves in a process that endeavours to tackle the tough issues of flags, parades, and dealing with the past. And this time, we have to add a process of dealing with the future, the size of the public sector, the challenge of welfare reform, the 800 million of austerity cuts, and the investment needed to cut corporation tax if we are given that power. One of the undoubted successes of the political process has been business's ability to engage with our elected representatives. And while that engagement has been frequent and frank, the outcomes have not always been as fruitful as perhaps both parties might have wished. Ladies and gentlemen, we are part of a business community which creates the jobs, that generates the tax to support Northern Ireland. And we have a responsibility to make that political engagement more meaningful and more productive. If the power to set and vary the rate of corporation tax is devolved, it will be us in the business community that is charged with the responsibility of investing the additional capital released, to employ more people, to create more opportunities, and yes, to generate more tax. The next few years are going to be difficult enough no matter what we do. But without the catalyst of corporation tax, I believe we face a vicious circle of cuts and austerity which ultimately will prove nothing more than what we already know, that our private sector is just too small at the moment to support the needs and the aspirations of our people. And your chamber has an important role to play in this process, because areas like trade support and export development may well face cuts alongside the other budgets. And part of our role will be to help come up with solutions to deliver such support. Campaigns such as Growing Something Brilliant and our export programs may well have to adapt to fill some of the gaps left by budgetary pressures. Cuts are an inescapable reality in the short term. But shrinking our way out of this problem won't work in the long run. We need to grow our future. And that's the crucial point when it comes to the corporation tax decision. Unlike austerity cutbacks, corporation tax is an investment in our private sector to grow new opportunities and to put new jobs on the ground for all of our communities. The price of doing nothing, of focusing solely on the past and ignoring the opportunity of the future, is, for the business community, unthinkable. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a business community, we need to redouble our engagement with our elected politicians, persuade them that the opportunity involves a bold leap and not a cautious step, that opportunity, like Henry Ford's alternative to giving customers a faster horse, means radical change, not tinkering at the margins. We, in the business community, must create a common vision of genuinely interesting times. Times of prosperity, of wealth creation, delivering sustainable employment that tackles the issue of deprivation in our society. Above all, times when we can look to the future with confidence and with certainty, and not to a past of fear and distrust. If I can return to that speech given by Bobby Kennedy in the University of Cape Town back in 1966. His purpose in dreaming up that fictitious Chinese curse was to drive home our individual and our collective responsibility to make a positive contribution when times are tough. Each of us, he said, will be judged on the effort we have contributed to building a new society and the extent to which our goals and our ideals have shaped that effort. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of our community is in our hands. Let's rise to that challenge. Thank you.